They post, they wait, they beg for hearts, for likes, for approval. But Machiavelli, centuries before social media, before dopamine traps and digital applause, already knew what today's world still refuses to admit. The moment you need validation, you've already lost. Not because attention is wrong, not because recognition is bad, but because the need for it, the hunger to be liked, approved, seen, makes you controllable. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. Because love is optional. Fear creates movement. And validation? Validation is just a prettier word for dependence. It means you need someone else to confirm who you are. That's not power. That's slavery. Let's rip this mask off and look at the truth, the cold, unflinching truth Machiavelli understood. If you want to rule yourself, rule others, rule anything, you must destroy the part of you that seeks applause. The addiction to validation is the death of control. Here's how it begins. You do something strong. People notice, they applaud, you feel good. So next time, you do something similar just to get that reaction again. And just like that, you're not acting for results anymore. You're acting for approval. You're not playing to win. You're playing to be seen winning. And that's where the collapse begins. Because the second your moves are influenced by the crowd becomes your master. Now you can be manipulated, not with chains or threats, but with silence. All they have to do is stop praising you. All they have to do is ignore you. And you crumble. Machiavelli understood that the truly powerful don't just command others, they command themselves. The man who acts only when he's celebrated is not a man. He's a puppet tied to applause. People give validation to control you. Validation looks innocent. But it's not generosity, it's leverage. When someone praises you, compliments you, uplifts you, it feels like a gift. But it's often bait. Here's how it works. They praise your loyalty, so you stay loyal, even when they betray you. They praise your strength, so you never ask for help, even when you're drowning. They praise your uniqueness, so you become obsessed with keeping it up, even if it's fake. That praise turns into a mirror. And if you stare into it long enough, you start living inside it. Machiavelli would see this clearly. Men are driven more by fear of losing what they have than by the hope of gaining what they desire. And when the thing you have is someone's approval, that fear makes you obedient. You stay in yin. You self-censor. You bend before they even ask. This is the genius of validation. It makes you thank the people who are slowly caging you. Needing to be liked makes you predictable. The person who needs validation can be read like a map. They'll flinch when ignored. They'll soften when praised. They'll break when criticized. And if Machiavelli taught anything, it's this. Predictability is death. In politics, in relationships, in war, in life. Once they know what moves you emotionally, they don't need to overpower you. They just need to stimulate the right feelings. The man who doesn't care if he's liked? Unstoppable. Unpredictable. Dangerous. He can insult and charm in the same sentence. He can give and take without needing applause. He can walk away from the stage while the others are still begging for the spotlight. Because validation is not just about attention. It's about permission. And the moment you need permission to act, you're already too late. The thirst for validation leads to emotional slavery. You want to know who's actually in control? Look at who doesn't care how they're perceived. That's the king. Everyone else is just orbiting, adjusting, performing. Validation makes you a slave, not to any one person, but to everyone. You change how you talk in different rooms. You filter your beliefs to avoid backlash. You betray your instincts to fit the crowd. You call it being polite. You call it emotional intelligence. But Machiavelli would call it what it is, weakness. Because truth without teeth is not noble, it's useless. And honesty that changes based on audience isn't honesty. It's performance. He didn't want rulers who bent in the wind. He wanted rulers who commanded the weather. If you walk into a room and wonder what they'll think of you, they already own you. But if you walk in knowing who you are, unmoved by praise or silence, that's when the room changes. Not you. Validation turns you into a performer instead of a strategist. There's a reason most people never become powerful. They're too busy performing to ever plan. They want to look smart more than be strategic. They want to appear confident more than build real strength. They want to be accepted, even if it means being weak. And every second spent trying to be seen is a second not spent building something worth seeing. Machiavelli's mind wasn't theatrical, it was surgical. He moved quietly, coldly, with one focus: results. Because you can fool everyone with your charm, your clothes, your polished words. But power is not fooled. Power doesn't care who you impress. It cares what you control. And you cannot control others when you still need their permission to feel valid. Validation delays the strike. Sometimes, you know what needs to be done. You see the weakness. You see the betrayal. You know the exact move. But you wait. You wait for approval. You wait for backup. You wait for someone to say, "Yeah, you're right, go for it." And that waiting kills the moment. By the time you finally move, it's too late. Machiavelli warned of this constantly. Hesitation is a crime. When opportunity shows up, it knocks once, not twice. It is better to act and repent than not to act and regret. And the number one reason people hesitate? They're waiting for validation. They want to be sure. They want to be liked. They want to be applauded. And in that pause, the game moves on, and someone colder takes their spot. Validation isn't just unnecessary, it's a liability. Because the man who stands alone, hated, questioned, doubted, but still stands, is far more dangerous than the man loved by all, but chained by their opinions. If you want freedom, if you want leverage, if you want to win in a world built to break those who need to be liked, kill your need for validation. Be feared if you must. Be misunderstood if you have to. But never, never beg to be seen. They post it, they wait, refresh, again. They say it's for expression, but Machiavelli would laugh, because when you remove the mask of aesthetics, performance, and modern ego games, what you see beneath is this: a silent beggar in royal clothing, begging for likes, for compliments, for proof that they matter. But if you need proof, then you don't matter. And that's where we begin this part, with a truth so sharp most people never dare to say it out loud. The more validation you seek, the more value you lose. Let's dig into the deeper, darker layers Machiavelli understood centuries ago, the ones that strip a person of autonomy, the ones that fracture leadership, and the ones that make kings behave like court jesters just to be clapped at by fools. Needing validation turns you into a mirror, not a force. You want to be liked, so you reflect back what people want to see. You start copying what's trending. You repeat what's popular. You adopt the tone, the posture, the opinions of the crowd, not because they're true, but because they're safe. Now you're no longer real. You're a mirror, and the more people look into you, the more they see themselves, not someone worth following. Machiavelli would have torn this mask off with one sentence: "A wise man does at once what a fool does at last." In other words, while they waste time trying to be liked, the powerful are already acting. So ask yourself, are you building something or performing something? Are you living to lead or dying to be approved? Mirrors reflect, but only fire creates movement. Be fire, not glass. Validation chokes risk, and without risk, you're replaceable. If you want to rise above the crowd, you must take actions the crowd won't. But the person addicted to validation, they don't move until they know how people will respond. They ask, what will people think? Will I look stupid? What if they don't get it? So they sit still. They wait. And someone else, someone colder, bolder, more self-reliant, takes the leap. Machiavelli didn't value caution. He valued timing. He understood that those who hesitate for applause end up clapping for those who didn't. Because in this world, the one who acts fast looks like a genius. The one who waits for permission watches from the sidelines. Validation kills speed. And speed is what wins wars, wins minds, and wins empires. Validation makes you easy to manipulate, even by friends. The most dangerous manipulator is not your enemy. It's the friend who knows you crave their approval. They don't have to control you. They just have to disapprove of you. You speak your truth, and they go quiet. You make a move, and they raise an eyebrow. You start growing, and they hint you're changing. And suddenly, you shrink. Not because they threatened you, but because they withheld what you need most. Their prey, their attention, their smile. Machiavelli understood this game centuries ago. He would say, "A prince who depends on the love of his subjects will never sleep in peace." Because love is temporary. It shifts, it folds, it's fragile. Depend on it, and you are theirs. Real power? It doesn't ask friends to clap. It doesn't pause for praise. It moves and lets the noise catch up later. Validation traps you in the persona they approve of. Here's the subtle prison. You do something bold. People love it. Now you have to keep doing it. You say something smart. They applaud. Now you can't say something unpopular. You've been typecast by your own audience. And the scariest part? You let it happen. You became so addicted to the version of you that got validation. You started killing every other part of yourself to protect it. But Machiavelli never believed in static identities. He believed in evolution, transformation, deception, whatever preserved power. Because you don't owe anyone consistency. You owe them results. So if they expect you to be nice, be cold. If they expect you to bend, break something. If they expect you to explain, go silent. The only identity worth keeping is the one that keeps you untouchable. Validation makes you chase those beneath you. Think about this. The people whose approval you chase are often people you've already outgrown, but you still want their applause. Why? Because they were there at the beginning. Because you used to admire them. Because they remind you of who you used to be. That's dangerous. Machiavelli never looked back for validation. He didn't crave the cheers of peasants when he was building for kings. The moment you surpass someone and still seek their approval, you tie your future to their limitations. And they won't clap for you. They'll slow you down. Because people who knew you before you rose don't want you to rise too far. Because then they have to face their own stagnation. Validation is not loyalty. It's a leash. And every time you chase it, you're running backwards. Validation is the last addiction of the undisciplined. Some people conquer lust. Others conquer laziness. A few conquer fear. But even then, many still secretly feed the most invisible addiction of all, the need to be liked. It's subtle, quiet, easy to hide. It doesn't look like weakness, it looks like humility. But here's how you know it's still running you. You speak less when you're around intimidating people. You shrink your success around those who haven't leveled up. You phrase your truth softly so it doesn't offend. That's not kindness, that's internal dependence. Machiavelli would tear it out. He'd rather be hated for power than loved for compliance. Because at the core of all control is this principle. You must never need what can be taken away. And applause, likes, approval, those can be taken in a second. So build your worth like a fortress, not a stage. The world will call you arrogant when you stop begging to be seen. They'll call you cold when you stop explaining yourself. They'll call you egotistical when you walk away from their stage. Let them. Because they don't understand this. Validation is for those still waiting to be told they're enough. Power is for those who already know and move like it. You don't need to be celebrated. You need to be unshakable. You can't command a room if you're still checking their faces to see if they approve. You can't own your path if you're still asking others if it looks impressive. And you damn sure can't rule anything if the sound of silence makes you nervous. Because Machiavelli understood something most people never will. You must become immune to applause, or you'll forever be ruled by its absence. Validation isn't an ego boost. It's a form of emotional debt, and every time you accept it, you're agreeing to pay it back with your freedom. Let's keep going. Into the core of how the need for validation rots your instincts, enslaves your vision, and breaks the very spine of your authority before you even realize it. Seeking validation kills your instinct. There's a moment in every powerful move where logic fades and instinct takes over. You don't have time to ask. You don't need approval. You just know. But when you've been trained to seek validation, your instinct goes silent. Why? Because instead of asking yourself, is this the right move? You ask, will they understand this? Will they agree with me? Will they support this? That moment of hesitation, that moment where you replace your gut with their gaze, that's where you die, because instinct is timed. It doesn't wait for applause. Machiavelli didn't want you to second guess. He wanted you to strike, not because it's perfect, but because it's necessary. The man who delays to be liked is already lost. The man who trusts his own sharpness, even in silence, becomes feared. The need to be understood is just a mask for weakness. Everyone says, I just want to be understood. But Machiavelli would say, why? Why must the world understand you? Why must they get you before you act, move, lead? This is the quiet confession inside most people's hearts. I don't feel strong enough unless someone else sees my strength. But understand this. Your vision is not a group project. Your instinct is not a democracy. Your plan doesn't require consensus. It requires commitment. Wanting to be understood is the craving of the powerless. It means your identity is still externally sourced. Machiavelli would rather be misjudged and win than understood and ignored. Let them misunderstand. Let them call you cold. Let them whisper in confusion. As long as you understand your next move, you are untouchable. Validation starves the beast inside you. Inside you is a cold, calculating, relentless force, a part of you that doesn't need kindness, comfort, or claps. It just needs space to act. But validation strangles that beast. Because when you're hooked on applause, you start taming yourself. You soften your speech. You delay your dominance. You mute your power. You become a shadow of what you could be, not because you're incapable, but because you're over-socialized. You're trying to win in a jungle using rules from a dinner party. Machiavelli never encouraged restraint for the sake of approval. He encouraged restraint for timing, for strategy, for domination. Because when the beast inside you moves, it shouldn't be to entertain. It should be to conquer. And if applause follows, fine. But if not, the kingdom still bends. The need for validation makes you loyal to the wrong people. You think you're being supportive. You think you're showing respect, gratitude, love. But what you're really doing is chasing validation from people who are below you. The friend you've outgrown, but still let criticize your ambition. The family member who's never built anything, but still makes you feel guilty for building. The mentor who once inspired you, but now resents your rise. You call it loyalty, but it's not. It's fear. Fear of losing connection. Fear of being seen as arrogant. Fear of rejection. And that fear makes you kneel before those who have no throne. Machiavelli knew the first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. So look, and if the people around you only clap when you stay small, they're not your supporters, they're your handlers. Validation shouldn't tie you to people. It should burn away the ones who expect you to ask for it. Validation is the modern version of censorship. In the past, they censored you with laws. Now they censor you with silence. You say something bold, no applause, no response, no like, no repost, no nod. So what do? You delete it, water it down, repackage it to be more palatable. That's not authenticity, that's compliance. And Machiavelli knew this better than anyone. If they can make you edit your truth for approval, you are not leading. You are performing. In a world that tries to silence anything uncomfortable, the most radical move is to speak like you need nothing back. No likes, no nods, no warm embrace. Say what must be said. Do what must be done. And let their silence echo louder than your own words. The strongest men in history didn't wait to be seen. They were hated when they rose, misunderstood, feared, laughed at, until they couldn't be ignored. And then, they were praised. Their portraits were painted. Their quotes were carved in stone. But in the beginning, they moved alone. This is what Machiavelli admired most: the silent rise, the cold momentum of someone who does not pause to explain himself. Because when your foundation is validation, your house will fall in silence. But when your foundation is purpose, they can throw stones and you'll still build. They laughed at Caesar. They questioned Napoleon. They doubted every man who stood too straight without asking first. And then they followed him, once he had already won. Let that be you. Move. Without claps, without reassurance, without a script. And when they finally see you, don't turn back. Don't slow down. Just nod once and keep ruling. Machiavelli didn't want you to stop feeling. He wanted you to stop needing. Because when your identity is no longer held hostage by their opinions, when you can walk forward whether they cheer or spit, when you can stand still in a room full of silence and feel nothing but clarity, that's not arrogance, that's freedom. And in a world of followers, that is the final step toward becoming untouchable. The hunger for validation is the most invisible prison in the world. It doesn't chain your arms, it chains your spine. You walk upright, but your posture bends to every compliment. You speak, but every word is shaped to be liked. You exist, not for impact, but for reaction. And Machiavelli, had he lived today, would say one thing: the need to be liked is the most elegant form of enslavement, because it feels like choice. Let's finish this. This final chapter is not about resisting validation. It's about killing the part of you that depends on it, so you can finally move like the kings he wrote for, cold, precise, untouchable. Validation is the currency of the powerless. Ask yourself, who needs validation the most? Not the rulers, not the dangerous, not the self-reliant, but the powerless. Because when you lack internal strength, you rent your worth from others. You let them assign it. And the price? Your obedience. You behave just enough to keep the applause. You smile just enough to be accepted. You filter every move so it doesn't disturb the crowd. Machiavelli's world had no space for this. Men should either be treated generously or destroyed. Not complimented, not coddled, not endlessly reassured. Because the one who needs nothing, who moves with indifference to applause or insult, is the most feared man in the room. The rest? They're just renters, leasing status from whoever's clapping. Validation turns you into a servant of the mood. Have you noticed? Your day feels good when people respond well. It feels off when they don't. That's not coincidence. That's dependence. When your mood is tied to the way others receive you, you are no longer a leader. You are a waiter, waiting to be fed validation so you can feel like yourself again. You smile, hoping they smile back. You speak, hoping they don't frown. You post, hoping they react. Machiavelli would spit on this. A wise ruler cannot govern by relying on the affection of others, for that affection is as shifting as the wind. If they cheer, fine. If they don't, move anyway. You are not a puppet dancing for their eyes. You are the puppeteer who walks away when the strings no longer serve you. You do not need their applause to be right. Here's the deadliest part of the validation trap. Eventually, if you don't get applause, you start believing you were wrong. They didn't like it? Must have been stupid. They didn't share it? Must have been weak. They didn't praise it? Maybe you're losing your touch. But this is the fatal error. You confuse silence with failure, and that makes you easy to mold, easy to steer, easy to disarm. Because if they want to control you, they don't need to argue. They just need to say nothing. Validation makes your self-trust conditional. Machiavelli never based his strategy on the reaction of the room. He based it on what the room needed to believe. He played perception like a chessboard, but never mistook the crowd for his compass. Because applause doesn't prove you're right, and rejection doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means you're ahead. And when you're ahead, the crowd always shows up late. The strongest power move, moving in silence with zero applause. They don't see it coming, because they expected you to announce it, to ask for permission, to test the waters, to post the update, the teaser, the poll, the draft. But instead, you just do it. You rise, you act, you execute. No audience, no build-up, no apology. This is what Machiavelli loved most in great rulers, the unpredictability of self-contained power. When no one knows what drives you, when no one can move you with praise or guilt, when your silence feels more dangerous than their threats, that's when you're no longer just independent. You're sovereign.